Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts about the 40K universe. I am your host, Gershwin, and you are watching One Mind Syndicate. Today, we continue with man. Let's get into 40 facts about the Imperial Guard. The Imperial Guard, also known as the Astra Militarum in traditional High Gothic, is the largest coherent fighting force in the galaxy. They serve as the Imperium of man's primary combat force and first in line of defense from the variety of threats which threaten the existence of the human race in the late 41st millennium, and they are a playable race inside Warhammer 40K game. The Imperial Guard is comprised of countless billions of men and women, hundreds of thousands of different regiments, supported by a vast array of light and heavy armored vehicles that provide the Guard's primary offensive punch. They are usually the first Imperial force to respond to a threat if a planet's planetary defense force fails to suppress it. They also garrison major locations of strategic or cultural interests to the Imperium, and are often found in defensive roles. The Imperial Guard is often referred to as the sledgehammer of the Emperor. The sheer amount of force that the Imperial Guard can bring to bear on the enemy is devastating, but it is not as direct or as precise as their Space Marine allies, who are described as the scalpel of the Emperor. The Imperial Guard first came into being during the Horus Heresy. Before those days, the normal yet courageous men and women that served as the Emperor's military force were known as the Imperial Army. Rather than risk losing control of conquered worlds gained during the Great Crusade, the Emperor commanded that the Imperial Army be formed. Drawn from Imperial-compliant worlds, these formations appear to have originally comprised a collection of volunteers, mercenaries, and the survivors of the indigenous armed forces. Each newly conquered or liberated world brought into Imperial compliance during the course of the Imperial campaign was assessed and a census taken of its population. From this, the Emperor's administrators of the Corps Logistic, the forerunners of the later Departamento Munitorum, calculated the tax that each world was to pay in the form of regiments of soldiers and war material. The numbers of regiments raised from each world varied enormously, in accordance with the size of each individual planet's population. Sparsely populated worlds would be taxed to supply only a handful of regiments annually, while the overcrowded hive worlds near the galactic core would have to supply hundreds of regiments every standard year. The demands of the Great Crusade continually increased. By the time the realm of humanity reached the eastern fringe of the galaxy, the Imperial Army was a fully fledged arm of its war machine, fighting on the front lines. Imperial Army forces were self-contained and autonomous, possessing control of their own warships. Vast and sprawling, these potent fighting forces were commonly assigned to Space Marine commanders, and could conquer whole worlds in their name. When the War Master Horus turned upon the Emperor, half of the Space Marine legions turned with him. Compelled by loyalty, fear, or personal ambition, so too did majority of those Imperial Army forces under the traitor's control. Millions upon millions of trained fighting men, possessed of their own dedicated armor units and interstellar transportation, were suddenly set at the Imperium's throat. Worlds burned in the fires of orbital bombardment. One-time comrades fought tooth and nail amid the blast rubble of loyalist worlds as the Imperial truth was torn down, replaced by a heretical ideology to ancient and malicious gods. In the wake of the resulting bloodshed, measures were implemented to ensure treason on such a scale could never again occur. The Imperial Army ceased to exist, and the link between fleet and army was permanently severed. War in the depth of space would be the responsibility of the Imperial Navy, while any and all operations conducted on the planetary surface would fall to the Imperial Guard. Commissars were introduced, men and women who were trained and indoctrinated as incorruptible watchdogs, arbiters of Imperial authority, who would ensure the swift and public execution of cowards and malcontents. Ripped of their autonomy and watched closely for disloyalty, the newly renamed Imperial Guard were now a codependent organization. Operations, structure, and command were brutally controlled. Trust and flexibility was sacrificed. Rebellions and insurgents against Imperial authority might be inevitable, but now they would be isolated, fragmented, and swiftly crushed, and thus was the birth of the Imperial Guard. The tenets of centralized imperial strategy are set by the High Lords of Terra themselves. The Lord Commander Militant passed on the dictates of the Augustus Gathering to Segmentum Command, who in turn hold responsibility for operations within their own designated regions of the Imperium. It is important to know, in practice, the distance and scale involved in the Imperium's wars render such centralized command elements little more than out-of-touch figureheads. Instead, the practicalities of command fall to the officer of highest rank in any given Imperial theater of war. Though assigned the Minitorum ranks of general, native honorifics such as Lord Marshal are often maintained. These officers are supported by a group of loyal personnel who between them comprise localized high command. Individual generals vary enormously in their approach, some coordinating their forces from well behind the line, possibly even from low orbit, while others take to the field amidst dedicated retinues of bodyguards. There is another rank available to the Imperial Guard, one outside of the conventional strategic command structure. This title gives absolute authority over all but the most exalted Imperial forces. This is the title of War Master. Such power can only be granted by the High Lords themselves. Stigma and superstition often sees this rank renamed, most famously to Lord Solar, and it is rare to see more than one War Master in any given stretch of a century. War Masters lead star-spanning Imperial crusades, or else the defense of an entire Imperial segmentum. Even the humblest Imperial Guardman outranks their counterparts who serve in the fighting forces of their homeworlds, the Planetary Defense Forces, or PDF. While strategic command is vital to Imperial Guardsmen in the field, the true foundation of the Imperial war effort is the Departamento Munitorum, also known as the Adeptus Minitorum. The military arm of the Adeptus Administratum, the Minitorum, is a galaxy-spanning logistical monster. The purpose of the Departamento Minitorum is to ensure that all the material needs of the Imperial Guard are met, from administrating recruitment taxes to overseeing the collection and disposal of slain soldiers. The Minitorum organizes and provides for almost every aspect of life in the Imperial Guard. The Departamento Minitorum has a presence on every Imperial world from which regiments are raised. Yet it would be a mistake to believe that with such prolification comes intelligent application of labor. With trillions of souls engaged at monotonous and little understood administrative tasks every day, errors are common and rarely rectified. For every regiment that overcomes such adversities, another finds itself deployed to environments without vital survival gear, or sent into battle against overwhelming or non-existing foes. Nonetheless, it is the testament to the sheer size of the Imperial Guard and to human courage and ingenuity that they are able to absorb the Minotaurum's frequently disastrous errors, only to emerge victorious. From the greatest crusading armada to the smallest watchtower garrison, Imperial Guard armies are composed of a mixture of distinct regiments. Each regiment is raised from a single world, its personnel bringing with them their native dialects, uniforms, customs, and loyalties. Any indigenous military structure is exchanged for the Minotaurum's enforced standard. Internal politics, grudges, or debts are for the most part ignored and allowed to fester so long as the morale and the performance of the regiment is not affected. Regiments are composed of one primary service arm, be it artillery, infantry, armor, or specialists, such as the abhumans, though each regiment can consist between 3 and 20 companies, and may number from a couple of hundreds men to tens of thousands. To the casual observer, this may seem as a weakness, as regiments are by necessity compelled to rely upon one another for the combined arms approach advocated by the Tactica Imperium. However, this lack of autonomy is another measure to prevent rebellion, ensuring that even if a whole regiment turns from the light of the Emperor, their lack of versatility will soon see them brought to heel and punished for their disloyalty. Some planets are able to raise a variety of regiments. Cadia, or Armageddon, for example, are huge worlds embroiled in seemingly endless war, whose populace are given ample opportunity to train in various aspects of warfare, but they are watched very carefully. Leadership at company level and regimental level is a duty assigned to officers recruited from the same world, and normally from the same founding as the regiment they lead. This practice ensures that local planetary nobles are placed in charge of those culturally deposed to offer them defense. These officers will be supported and observed by the regimental commissars, attached during their founding by the Minitorum. These men must look to the regiment's morale and loyalty above all else, and will take any measure, no matter how extreme, to ensure that men do not disgrace themselves. Certain regiments of specialists can be an exception to the organizational norm, most notable abhumans, rough riders, and super heavy tanks. Though they can conceivably be sent into battle in large groups, it is standard practice to break such regiments into companies or even squads before attaching them to more typical regiments, where their specialized skills can give their adoptive comrades a much needed edge. And those were 40 facts about the Imperial Guard. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know as I wrote this and as I read this, I really enjoyed learning more about the structure of the Imperial Guard, and it made me want to collect an Imperial Guard army. Please comment down below and let me know if you are one of those people that like to collect an Imperial Guard army that is troop oriented, even though you would be destroyed in the game. How many of you collectors really like to see the infantry at work? Please comment down below. And of course, there's going to be a part 2, so subscribe to the channel. If you're already a subscriber, thank you for liking, commenting, and sharing. That really helps out the channel a lot. By you guys liking and commenting, it tells YouTube that you want more Warhammer 40K content, and it helps out not only content providers like One Mind Syndicate that puts out Warhammer 40K content, but all the other guys. So thank you so much, and I'll catch you in the next one. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.